Okay, so try to understand what is Route 53. We already understood in the previous sessions. Basically, the purpose of Route 53 is it is a DNS. Okay, Route 53 is nothing but DNS. And what is the port number of DNS? The port number of DNS is 53. That's why we are calling it as the service name is Route 53. Usually, the service talks about DNS, domain name system. The port number is 53. DNS port number is 53. That's why we usually call the service as Route 53. They named it as Route 53. What is the purpose of DNS? DNS is mainly for converting IP address into domain name and domain name into IP address. Okay. You can see here what is domain name www.facebook.com. Some example www.example.com. This is the domain name. And this domain name must be converted into IP address. Okay, when we are trying to access any application with the help of the domain name, usually it has to convert into the numerical IP address like this. The domain name must be converted into IP address. And again, while we get the response from the browser, again this IP address must be converted into domain name, vice versa. So DNS is mainly for converting, it is responsible for converting IP address to the name, domain name, and domain name to IP address. Okay. So even if you go for like www.google.com in the browser, okay, it will be converted into the IP address. Okay. So DNS, you see here, when we launch any EC2 machine, you know, right? When we launch any EC2 machine, we get public IP as well as private IP. And we also get some domain name. Okay. So we also get some domain name. In the EC2 machine, you see, I'll show you. Once you launch an EC2 machine, we'll get the public IP as well as private IP. Along with these two things, we'll also get domain name, DNS name. And what is the purpose of this DNS? DNS server is responsible for who will assign this DNS name? Who will assign this DNS name? DNS server is responsible for assigning DNS name to the machine. Okay. You can ignore this part. With the main thing that we need to understand is like how we are going to create. Let me open this one. Okay. I'm going here. What is the service name we need to search for? We need to search for a service called Route 53. Okay. Need to go for Route 53. And here you can see we don't have anything on the dashboard. Let me see here. What is the very first thing that we need to do? Let me delete the hosted zone here. I have some hosted zone. We can delete it. Yesterday we created a hosted zone. We can delete it this. We can delete this hosted zone. Okay, why? Because we'll be understanding. Saying that when I'm trying to delete this. Okay, it is asking to try to delete all the records in the hosted zone before you delete the hosted zone. Okay, so if it is not getting deleted, it is suggesting like please go ahead and delete all the records. I have created this particular record because the rest of the two are default records. I'll be deleting this record. So if who have not attended yesterday's session, please go through the previous session so that you will understand what is the record and all. I'm going to the dashboard. For now, I don't have any hosted zone. What is the very first thing that we need to do? Suppose if I want to integrate an application, make sure that you have an application running. Okay, I'm going here to the EC2. Make sure that your application is running somewhere in the server. If your application is running in the server, then you can go ahead and what I'm doing is I'm just launching a server, Amazon Linux. For now, I am choosing T2.medium. And key pair I'm selecting as this one. VPC, I'm going for a default subnet. I'm not doing anything. Okay, I'm going for default subnet. I'm just going for the advanced details. Here in the advanced details, I'll be providing some script. So you all know this one. What is the script that I am going to provide? This. I'm just providing the script. Okay. So I'm just launching an instance. This is what I'm doing. Okay. I'm just launching an instance. And before that, like, so you know how to launch after launching an instance. If I want to go for security groups, you can edit the security groups. Go to the security groups. Here we have security groups option. In the security groups, then usually we will open some roles like SSH is by default open. SSH is open. If you want, we can close it out. For now, I am opening all traffic. Okay. For you anywhere IPv4. You know, right, how to custom. You can use custom. Otherwise, if you want to, if you want to open only TCP, if you want to open only a particular protocol or only a particular port called MySQL or DP, you can select here. You can select the port number. For now, I am just opening all traffic for this particular machine. And after launching the instance, you can see how our application is up and running. You all know by taking the public IP address. Why I'm stressing out here is you need to check the public IP to see how your application is working fine or not. Usually we can see our application is running or not. Okay. So sometime will get it. So now what I am doing is I want to attach this IP address. Okay. I'm trying to access my application with this. I'm able to access the application. I can see the host name. By using public IP address, I'm able to access my application. Let's assume that. So what I will do is I'll go to the Route 53 service. Okay. I'm going to Route 53. So I need a domain name. I want to attach the domain name to this IP address. I don't want to share this public IP to my to the public. Okay. I don't want to share. Consider this is my website. I don't want to share this public IP to my friends or whoever it is. So any questions? So what I'm doing is like now I am going to create a I will be registering a domain name. How to register the domain name? In the AWS, please go to a service called Route 53. Okay. Once you go to the service called Route 53, you can able to see, let me delete this hosted zone first. I'm just deleting it. I'm selecting it. I'm going to delete it. I'm deleting it. So first time what I'm doing is I'm going for a dashboard. The dashboard you can see, first you need to, in the Route 53 dashboard, you can see on the left navigation, you can see registered domains. That is the most important thing that we need to do. First, we need to have a domain. So it is not important that you have the domain from AWS. It is not mandatory that you have to purchase the domain from here only. You can purchase the domain from any of the other websites. Okay, we have told some website. We have seen some websites, right, where we can purchase the domain names. Okay, GoDaddy, Hostinger. You can go to any of the website and you can purchase the domain name. So in AWS also we have this one to register the domain. Go for registered domains. You can select the registered domains. You can search for any of the domain name. I'm searching for vamsicloud.net, vamsicloud.com, and that particular domain is not available. I'm going for others. It is clearly showing these are the other domains available. Whatever the domain that we are asking, this is not available, and it is suggesting some other domains. You can go for other domains. If I want to go for this vamsicloud.net, I'm selecting this particular one. I'm going to proceed, and I will be selecting the next and be providing the contact information. Once I click on next and once if I review and submit, that's it. My domain will be registered. I can use that domain to link to my IP address. Okay. I'll be using that domain to link to this IP address. How I am going to link? I'm not registering this one. Why? Because we need to pay some $15 for this one to register any of the domain. I'm just showing you like how can we register the domain. This is the process. This is the process we usually follow to register the domain. And how to link. Okay, once the domain is registered, how can we go for attaching that domain to our IP address? Go to the hosted zones. Once your domain is registered, then we will be going to the hosted zones. Under hosted zones, we don't have any hosted zones for now. You can create a new hosted zone. Okay, I'm just creating a new hosted zone. We don't have any hosted zones. For now, I am creating a new hosted zone. So it is asking what is the domain name that you want to the domain you want to route the traffic for. Okay. I've already registered, right? I've already registered the domain, the same domain name I am using. vamsicloud.com is the domain name that I'm just showing you. Okay. I have not registered. Assume that I have registered this domain name, and that is the reason why I am providing this domain name here. And you know the difference between public and private. I'm just giving the name as public hosted zone because the traffic will be routed through the internet. If I provide public, the traffic is routed on the internet. If I provide private, only within the organization, within the VPC. I'm selecting public. I'm going ahead and creating a hosted zone. We have seen all these things in the previous sessions itself. Okay. I have a hosted zone now. What should I do now after having the hosted zone? Select the hosted zone. Click on the hosted zone. By default, how many records will be here? How many records you can see here by default? You will be having two
Two.
records. One is NS and SOA. You know, right? What is the purpose of these two records? One is NS. NS stands for name server. The other one is what? SOA. SOA stands for state of authority. Name server. Okay. You can see here the server names. The server names. Okay. These are the servers that are responsible for converting the domain name into IP address into domain name. Okay. These are the servers. You can see here, these are the servers. These are responsible for converting the domain names into IP addresses and IP addresses into domain names. Okay. So, and this is state of authority. This is state of authority. So the purpose of this one is like it maintains all the information about the DNS. Okay. It maintains about the information about the DNS. We'll see. We'll understand that after some time. So these are the by default two records. Okay. These are the two default records that we have. And if you want to go further, you need to create a record. If you want to attach your domain name to the IP address, this is the IP address. Okay. If I want to attach a domain name to my IP address, then usually I will go ahead and create a record. Just click on create a record. And by default, it is clearly showing this is the domain that you are going to attach. And here we have multiple options, record type. For now, we will choose routing the traffic to IPv4 IP addresses. Okay. I'm going to create a record. I'm choosing this particular one. I want to route traffic to IPv4 IP addresses. That's the reason why I choose this one. If you want to attach this domain name to your IP address directly, I will be providing this. I'll be providing this IP address here. I'll be providing this IP address here. Okay. I'm going to select the routing policy. What is the routing policy we use for attaching the domain name? For attaching the domain name to the IP address, what is the routing policy we use? The very first, very simple policy is what? Simple routing policy. We can go ahead and we can create a record. That's it. We just attached our IP address. We just attached our domain name to the IP address. That's it. Very simple. If you have your application running on, if your application is accessible on IP address, and if you don't want to share that IP address, and if you want to share a domain name, you can purchase the domain name and you can attach the domain name to your IP address. So if you are really registered a domain name, then you can, okay, once you have attached the domain name, now you can able to access the application by using vamsicloud.com. Instead of accessing the IP address, you can access the application by using vamsicloud.com. Since we have not registered it, okay, since we have not registered it, we are not going for it for now. So this is how actually we do. Got it? Any questions? So this is the simple routing policy. Let me go ahead and show you the other routing policies also. In the same simple, I'm deleting the record, okay? I'm deleting the record. This is how actually we create the record. I'm going to delete this record called A for now. And in the other way, I will show you how to attach in the different, what are the other mechanisms we have. So the other mechanisms, like you can click on create a record. The domain name, it is clearly showing. And I have selected routing a traffic to the IPv4 IP addresses. And you don't want to select IP address. You have the load balancer URL. You can click on alias and you can choose the load balancer URL. Consider my application, I have a load balancer. I'm having a load balancer. I'll choose the load balancer here. I'll select the country. And again, it will display the load balancer name here. Okay, it will display the load balancer here. If you create a load balancer in Mumbai region, it will show you the load balancer. You can select that load balancer and you can click on create a record. That's it. This is another kind of simple routing policy. What is the difference, Chandrakant? What is the difference between the previous one and this one? Earlier, we were attaching only Earlier we were attaching the IP address. You see, if I remove this, if I enable, if I disable this alias button, what it is asking? It is asking to provide
IP address.
IP address. If I enabling this one, what it is asking? It is asking to provide the load balancer. You can select the load balancer. You can select any of the region. I'm selecting Mumbai region. If I have created a load balancer in the Mumbai region, we need to provide the URL of,
Load
we need to
balance.
provide the load balancer URL here. That's it. We will create a record. So that what happens, whatever the traffic that is going to the load balancer, we can access that by using this domain name. You understood, right?
Yes,
Either
yes.
we can attach the IP address, we can attach the domain name to the IP address, or otherwise we can also attach the domain name to the
Load balance.
load balancer URL. That's it. Simple routing policy is done. And what are the other routing policies we have? So for now, we don't have the domain registered and we cannot see the practicals. If you want, you can purchase the domain name, small domain name, and you can see the practicals. Okay. This is how actually we attach the domain name to this one. So let me go ahead and show you the other ones. Okay. I'm going back to the hosted zone. Here I have some records. I don't have, these are the two default records. Okay. Don't disturb the default records. These are the two default records that should be there. And let me show you how to create another record. So I'm going to create another record for another routing policies. The same domain name okay, the same domain name I'm choosing. This is the step, this is the record type I'm following here. Record type A routes the traffic to IPv for IP addresses. Okay. I'm going to select this one. Alias will be selecting so some load balancer or other, okay, this kind of stuff. Or otherwise, we can keep the IP address only. For now, I'm just giving this IP address. Okay, some IP address you can select. This is the IP address I'm selecting, but I don't want to use simple routing policy. I want to use weighted. When I'm using weighted, it is asking how much weight you want to provide here. How much weight? So I am giving like 80% of the traffic. If I mention 80, the 80% of the traffic will be moved to this particular server. 80% of the traffic will be diverted. 80% of the traffic will be diverted to this particular server. Okay. And if you want another record, okay, if you want the remaining 20% to be moved to the another server, okay, I'm just creating another record, the same domain name, the same record type I'm choosing. I'm providing a different name. Consider this is my IP address, which is providing the services, and I have another server IP address, which is providing some, which is where the same, where my application is installed. I'm providing same IP address where my application is installed. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to create these two records. Okay. You understood, right? So consider this is present in the US West region, or this is present in some different region. And consider this is present in US West, and this particular one is present here. Also, you need to select weighted routing policy. You need to present the remaining 20% weight here. And you can select here, this is US East something, US East load balance or something. That's it. You can click on create a record. Yes, the record is being created. What we did now. Okay, what we have created now. Maybe today also you need to see. I don't have charger. Why? Because I came to Bangalore. I'm here in a different place where the facility is not here. Okay. So for now I cannot plug in the charger. So excuse me if the class discontinues. Okay. So what we did now, for now what we did, you can see the dashboard. I have a hosted zone. I have a hosted zone. This is the domain name that we have created and how many records that I have attached. I have created a new record, you see. I have created two new records. One is with 80%. The other one is what? With 20%. So 80% of the traffic I am sending to one server, and the remaining 20% I will be sending to another server. You know what is the difference between weighted routing policy and simple routing policy? You understood, right? Any questions in understanding what? Yeah, please.
No, no question.
Okay, this is how actually we create weighted routing policy. I'm deleting these records. I'm going to show you another one. Let me create one more record. Okay, let me create one more record. This is the domain name, and I'm going to use the same record type, and I'll be providing the IP address here. You can go for another routing policy called failover. I'm selecting failover. failover routing policy. So when I'm selecting failover, okay, when I'm selecting failover, it is asking to choose the failover record type. So I would like to keep two things here. It is by default asking when I'm selecting the failover routing policy, it is asking whether you want to make this region as primary or secondary, whether you want to make this server as primary or secondary. So this particular server, which is running here, this is primary. Okay. And I'm making this as US West something, US West something. If you want to go for another record, just create another record, the same domain name. Okay. And I will be changing the IP address. Consider I'm changing the server IP address as this one. Maybe this is not the exact IP address. Assume that this is the IP address I'm having. I'm going to choose the same failover routing policy. And it is asking, okay, I'm going to make it as secondary. Okay, the first one I'm going to make it as primary. I'm creating a record. I'm making this one as primary. And another record I'm creating. This is the IP address I'm providing. And I'm making it as what? Secondary. That's it. I'm going to create a record. When I'm creating a record, it is asking health check ID something. Okay. Okay, this is the one it is asking US. That's it. I'm going to create a record. Okay, maybe I've given invalid health check ID. Here also, what is the thing I provided? US West and okay, we can create a record. So usually we need to provide the health check ID. Okay, we need to provide the health check ID, but we have not created any health checks. Right? That's why it is clearly showing the health checks are needed. So I'm just showing you like how we are going to create a record. Okay, how we are going to create a record for the failover. This is usually we will set up any routing policy. We have all the options here. You can see here. You can go to the record type. We need to select a record. We have different types of records here. Okay, different types of records here. But usually, if you want to assign any routing policy, if you want to create any record for the routing policy, we always go with the A record. There are other records also which are used for different purposes. But if you want to route the traffic to the IPv4, if you want to route the traffic to the servers or IPv4 addresses, definitely this is the record type we choose. We need to provide either IP address or the load balancer. You can select alias option also. If you select alias option here, you will be selecting the region or load balancer, anything. Okay, you can select. I'm going to select the network load balancer. There are load balancers also. Usually we can select the load balancer. We can attach the region. If your load balancer is in the Mumbai region, select the Mumbai region. And by default, we have already created a load balancer. You will see the load balancer here. Select the load balancer and okay, go ahead and create the record. And you need to understand the different types of records, different types of routing policies here. That is the important thing. Okay. I've told you, right? When you are creating a record, you need to understand what are the routing policies you can see here. Simple routing policy. Okay. Chandrakant, what is a simple routing policy? What is the advantage we have?
You can directly assign IP address to our domain.
Either we can attach IP address or otherwise we can also attach load
Load
balance,
balance.
load balancer
Yes.
URL to the IP address. That's it. That is a simple routing policy. What is weighted routing policy? Consider we have two different regions. We have our infrastructure in two different regions. If you want to divert 80% of the traffic to the region 1, and if you want to divert the remaining 20% of the traffic to
Another region.
another region, then we'll go for
Weighted out.
weighted routing policy. What is failover? The failover, you see, when I'm selecting failover, it is asking to choose primary and secondary. So here we are not giving any weight. If I select primary, by default, the traffic will be routed to the primary region. And I'm going to create another record and I will be mentioning that region as Secondary. If I select the secondary, what happens? The secondary region will come into picture only when the primary region,
Change.
if something happens into, if some failure happens to the primary region, then only the secondary region will receive the,
Traffic.
you got it right? So when we are using failover region, we will be setting up the failover. If we have our infrastructure in two different regions, we'll be selecting the failover. We can create a failover recording, failover routing policy. Failover routing policy will have two records. Will have two things, primary and secondary. If I'm selecting the primary, that particular region will always receives the traffic. And if something happens, if a failure occurs to that particular region, then only the secondary region will receive the traffic.
Traffic.
Okay, this is called this is called active passive. Okay, this is also called as active passive routing policy. The primary region will be always active. Something happens to the primary. If the primary is not able to accept the traffic, then the secondary region will come. Secondary region will becomes active. Okay, this is what failover routing policy. Then what about this one? The other routing policies you can see here. You can also see the other routing policies like geolocation. Can you see when I'm selecting the geolocation, it is asking to choose the location. Okay, it is asking to choose the location. So we need to choose the location here. When I'm selecting the geolocation routing policy, it is asking to choose the location. We have different locations here. So if your customers are from, okay, I'm giving the IP address over here. I'm giving the same IP address here. And I want to route the traffic to this particular server, okay, from the customers of India. Okay, I'm assigning that server to the India. So what is the meaning here? So whatever the request comes from the geographical location called India, that will be reaching out to this particular IP, this particular server. You got it right? So whatever the request that comes from the India, that will be reaching out to this particular server. If you want to divert the traffic to some other server from different region, you can create another record. You can select the same thing here. I'm giving a different IP address here. I'm giving 85 something different IP address. But here you also need to select geolocation. Now you can give a different region. You can give a different region. I'm selecting US. Okay, United States. That's it. Are you getting now what is the difference between what is actually geolocation routing policy based on the customers also? Okay, this particular server is having the content for the users of India, and this particular server, another server is having the content from another server is having the content which is related to US customers. So we are just diverting the traffic. If any request comes from the US, those requests will be reaching out to this particular IP. If any request comes from India, if any request comes from the Indian location, then we will be, where is India? I've created record, right? Yes. If any request comes from the India, then those requests will be reaching out to this particular. This is how we are creating a record. You know how to create a record. Now you understood what is a record here. What is a record in the Route 53? We will be creating a record based on the routing policy. Either we can create